Okay, this will be our final lecture for today. I'm moving on to Tchaikovsky. Some of Tchaikovsky, I tend to anyway think of Tchaikovsky as a later composer than Brahms, but in fact, some of his symphonies predate some of those of Brahms. So, for example, in the Norton Anthology of the Symphony, Tchaikovsky comes before Brahms. There are three Tchaikovsky symphonies that I recommend that you would listen to. They are numbers 4, 5, and 6. They are really amazing and powerful works. But first, a little bit about Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky, you've heard of probably from the Nutcracker. You all know the Nutcracker, and you probably know the 1812 Overture, played on the 4th of July. It celebrates the victory of the Russians over Napoleon. Tchaikovsky is a Russian composer, and because of that, his music sometimes has some different modal qualities that we associate with the Russian school of composition. These are was begun essentially with the composer Mikhail Glinka, whose Overture to Ruslan and Ludmilla you may know, even though if you don't think you know it, you may have heard it before. And then followed shortly after Tchaikovsky what we call the Mighty Handful, but we'll talk about those next semester. But it includes Rimsky-Korsakov and Mussorgsky, whom, again, you may know from Pictures at an Exhibition and Night on Bald Mountain, as well as A Flight of the Bumblebee at Scheherazade. Anyway, Tchaikovsky is a Russian composer, but we need to remember that at this point in history, the Russian court is essentially French in its outlook. They speak French as the national language of the court. Lots of reasons for this. We're not going into the history of it now. We'll talk a little bit about Russian history when we talk about Prokofiev and Shostakovich next semester. Tchaikovsky is a symphonist. He also wrote operas. He wrote ballet because the resurgence of, or the development of what we know as classical ballet really comes to the fore with Russian dancers and Russian composers at the end of the 19th century who then leave Russia and come to Paris. And we then think of the ballets in Paris. But you may have heard of the Kirov or the Bolshoi Ballet. And those are the people who are coming from Russia. Those are Russian companies. So Tchaikovsky is a symphonist. He is someone who makes his mark early, makes it well, is famous. He wrote a very famous piano concerto in B-flat minor that I'm sure you know. He wrote songs, wrote lots of stuff. His symphonies are in the classical romantic tradition of Brahms, and we could also talk about Dvorak with this, but they tend to be more romantic, more in the late romantic style that we almost associate with Mahler. It's kind of this bridge person. The melodies are very long. They are full of pathos, deep, disturbed sadness, particularly the 6th Symphony, which is called the Pathétique. The 4th Symphony is autobiographical. Tchaikovsky was gay. Like Rock Hudson, he was forced to marry to hide his gayness. It lasted, I think, 3 days, something like that. Tchaikovsky ran away from the marriage, was very unhappy, and it was taken care of later. He annulled or divorced or whatever. And the 4th Symphony is his musical expression of his emotions during this period. So it's famous for that as well. I don't remember if it's the 4th or the 5th has, but probably the first classical piece that's in 5/4 instead of 2, 3, or 4. It's 5 additive meter. But that we'll find, particularly when we talk about Bartok, that these uneven meters, 5, 7, 8 counted 3 plus 3 plus 2, are indicative of Slavic music or music from the eastern part of Europe. We'll talk about that next semester. Tchaikovsky's symphonies. I really recommend that you listen to them. They're really heavy. They're often used for commercials, as are his ballets, music from Swan Lake, music from Sleeping Beauty. If you know the Disney film Sleeping Beauty, I love you. Anyway, that's straight from the Tchaikovsky ballet. So they just added words to it. Tchaikovsky is featured in the Nutcracker, in the Disney movie Fantasia, and just all over the place. The first piano concerto, you listen to it, you'll know it. The violin concerto was a very interesting piece. When it was composed for one person. And when Tchaikovsky finished it, he said, "This is too difficult. Nobody was ever going to be able to play it." I think it took 3 or 4 people to finally find somebody who agreed to learn it because they thought it was too difficult. Now, of course, we hear sixth graders playing it, but in the 19th century, it was considered too difficult. So that's our little brief lecture on Tchaikovsky. Listen to the examples in the book. Also listen to 4, 5, and 6 when you get a chance.